Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Good Human. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is a video episode. So, if you are listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts and you want to hop on over to YouTube, you can find this video on youtube.com/Abby Wellner. And the reason why we have a video episode going today is because we have a very special guest with us today. We have Miss Maddie Miles. She is the founder of Peace Love Hormones and a female hormone expert. And I'm so excited to have her on the pod. We're going to pick her brain today, learn all about how we can live in tune with our cycles. So, with that, welcome, Maddie, to Good Human.
Hello. Thanks, Abby. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. I wanted to hear a little bit about you, where you're from, sort of like your origin story, how you got interested in hormones in the first place, and sort of what you do now.
Absolutely. So, my story, I'm still working on my elevator pitch and making it as short as I can because it's so hard to fit an entire, like 20 plus years of healing into a 5-minute story. But, very long story short. And if anyone is interested in learning more about my story, I always just refer them to go to my podcast where I get into it. But I was very, very sick from a young age. I had a bunch of imbalances going on within my body and a heavy toxic burden, which most of us have, and a lot of just root causes that were not addressed when I was younger. And they were displaying themselves as anxiety and depression and insomnia and eating disorder. I was diagnosed with anorexia. And so I was really I was just battling a lot from about the age of, it was earlier than fifth grade, but fifth grade was the first time I had ever seen a medical professional. I was starting to see a therapist and then eventually a dietitian once I was diagnosed with an eating disorder. And it really was just from that point on throughout my senior year of college was this roller coaster of a journey with, being thrown into different hospitalization programs for my eating disorder and for everything, but predominantly the eating disorder was my parents' main focus at the time. And then I would relapse every time I got out because they were never addressing the root cause. And I would get out and I would still feel really I wasn't okay emotionally, but I would be discharged because I had, they put back on weight onto my body. And so anyway, I kept relapsing and it was my senior year of high school. I graduated early. I moved to Spain and then I was sent home from Spain just to be hospitalized again with a feeding tube. And it was at that time in my life where I saw the issue and I saw that I was really sick and I was ready to get better. And I wanted to go back to Spain. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to start my own business. I had like so many dreams and aspirations and just realized that I wasn't going to be able to do any of them if I was in a hospital.
Right.
And so I approached my parents. I said, I get it. I understand and accept that I'm sick now, which is really hard for me being a very stubborn Leo. But I was like, I understand. But what we've been doing for the last, 6+ years of my life has not been working. I didn't know at the time that there was such a thing as, like natural medicine and functional medicine, like all these things that, it's all like a first language for me now. But at the time I remember like none of us knew, my parents didn't know, I didn't know, but I just told them, I was like, there has to be something better than throwing me into another hospital, feeding me the, just foods that I would only describe the foods that I was being fed in the hospital as like downer foods. They weren't supporting my gut. They weren't supporting my, and the gut is foundation of our entire health and, our neurotransmitters and our hormones and all of these things. And, I was still just so depressed and insomniac and, just really, really sick. And so I just told them, I was like, we need to find something else. So my precious mom, who's my best friend and, did her and my dad, but especially her, did so much research for any place that I went into. She found this integrative medicine clinic about an hour outside of downtown Chicago. And so we were commuting so much every single day to go see this team of professionals, and now they're like this a huge practice, and I love them, and it's really cool because we work together,
Oh, okay.
and really converse as like colleagues now versus like,
Hmm.
oh, she's our patient. But there was such a small practice at the time, and I remember first seeing the psychiatrist, and he was the first medical professional I'd ever met who was like, I actually don't want you on any medication, because I was on so much medication at that point.
Right.
And she's like, I actually don't want you on any of that. And I want to start using the foods that you eat to, improve the way that your body functions. And therefore, you're going to start feeling better in all regards. You start feeling better physically, you start feeling better emotionally, energetically, spiritually. And so, I definitely thought it was like nonsense at first, and I was like, what? But I was optimistic, because I was like, I don't want to be on like medications anymore. This hasn't
Hmm.
worked for me. And so, really just learning about nutrition, IV and vitamin therapy, herbalism, and herbal nutraceuticals to help with. I was dealing with a bunch of stuff. I mean, I got bit by a tick one summer, amidst all of this, and contracted Lyme disease and got really sick with that. So, I had chronic UTI infections from hormonal birth control, which I was also put on and prescribed
Hmm.
during high school. So many things going on with my body that it was a long time of healing, and I'm still healing in so many ways. All humans are. We're all healing from, you know, deep rooted ancestral traumas, and, the antibiotics and Advil that we took as kids. Like, we're healing from so much, right? So I'm
Hmm.
not, I never want anyone to think that I'm like, I've conquered all, but I'm in such a better place now, obviously. And I feel the best. I didn't even know it was possible to feel this healthy, because,
Hmm.
there was a time of my life where I was like, I don't know if I can go another day. I'm so sick and I feel so terrible. But, working with this clinic was really life changing for me, and not only improving my health, but just learning about the human body and the mind, and how everything is connected, and, how to really truly heal. And so I went to school, I studied dietetics and nutrition in undergrad, and realized that everything that I was learning in school was so sterile, and it was very like Western based, and it was not at all in line with what I was doing outside of school to actually heal my body.
Hmm.
So that's when I really started to question things, and I started to question as well hormonal birth control that I had just been so easily handed in the doctor's
Right.
office when I was in high school, and, started learning and just doing a lot of research. I was doing me search, like I was really like, that was my full-time job. I felt like throughout college, like, yeah, sure. I had fun, and I still like went to school, and, was learning my studies through my institution, through my university. But the amount of work that I was doing outside of that, that was a full-time job, was my healing. And everything that I did revolved around just feeling good and like taking care of myself. And so I learned so much. I became such a nerd about this all. I love it. And I started to do a lot of research on hormonal birth control, and realized that a lot of the issues that I was still experiencing, even though I was doing all of this amazing healing with this integrative clinic, I was like, I'm still not sleeping very well. I still get panic attacks, and my libido is non existent. And I had a boyfriend at the time all throughout college, and I was just like, I know I really love him. Like, maybe something's wrong with me. And I just felt like
Hmm.
so weird and crazy for
Yeah.
not wanting to just like, have sex all the time. And so I really just, I started to do a lot of research into the pill. I started to listen in on podcasts, like Alyssa Vitti, and a lot of these, pioneers who are well older than I am, who have been doing this since they were younger, back in like the 80s,
Hmm.
and listening to podcasts about them, flowing with their cycles and eating different foods and moving, different ways during their cycle, and how amazing and empowering it was. And I was like, I don't even have a cycle, and I was like, wait, that can't possibly be good, that,
Hmm.
I'm not ovulating, and I'm not having a period. And that's a huge part of what makes us, who we are as women. And I really started to like question it. So I did a ton of research. I eventually made the decision to get off of hormonal birth control. I, of course, did it safely. I didn't cut cold turkey. I did months of research and months of prep
Mhm.
work beforehand, adopting cycle syncing methods, but doing it to the moon phases, because we do have a deep rooted connection as women to Mother Nature, to Mother Moon, and just really harnessing that and tapping into it and adopting all of these things that are just like ancient tradition, but we've really lost as modern day society and modern day women. And it was so, it was just every single day. I mean, still, I'm like, it's just breathtaking how incredible our bodies are.
Yeah.
And, we're still learning so much because still the bulk of medical research and nutritional research and exercise and all of that is still done on the male body. So we're still learning more every single day. That's why I always tell people, like, don't believe everything that you see just because there's research to back it up. It's such a confusing realm because, the funding for a lot of research, it's skewed. Let's just say
Mhm.
that. But also, most of it is done on lab rats and males, and so we are just so different on so many levels from men. And so, what suits them, I'll just throw out a really typical fad diet is like fasting, intermittent
Mhm.
fasting and keto and all of these things that have just been, capitalized on by marketing companies and agencies. And like, this is good for you, this is healthy for you. And then women may feel good for like, 4 or so weeks of doing it. And then everything starts to crash. Their thyroid starts to crash and their adrenals and, their menstrual cycle gets all wonky. So it's so fascinating learning about our bodies and how different they are and how, we can eat a certain way and we can move a certain way and take herbs to prevent PMS and to prevent hormone imbalances and to manage PCOS and endometriosis and all of these, labels that we've been given. And so that is really, that's where my passion lies. I truly believe I was put on this earth to do that. And that's
Mhm.
why I hit, the depths. And I think more often than not, I've met a lot of people who it was like their greatest struggles brought them to where they are now.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I didn't get sick, I would probably be when I was younger, I wanted to be like an actress and a singer, and I probably still would have gotten an eating disorder, most definitely living in LA, doing that.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting to see like where our life, leads us. I went from, being super sick in so many different ways to, healing myself naturally and now helping others do that. And so I am the founder of Peace Love Hormones, which we really are, like, to sum up all of the things that we encompass, we're just like a virtual platform for women's and menstrual health. And I say both of those because not all women menstruate, but we still help them with their health. And not all menstruators like to be identified as women. So
Mhm.
we
Yeah.
target it all though. And really just empowering women to take back control of their health because it's been stripped of us, like our power when it comes to our health and walking into that doctor's office. The medical mistreatment is just, it's so real and it's killing women, how, prevalent and strong it is. So at the end of the day, if I could at least empower one new person to learn more about their body, to learn more about their cycle, to start adopting some of these natural ways of just cyclical living and healing, then I've done my job. But of course, we do have, we have an app, we have herbal products as well. Right now, I just have one that's targeted for PMS.
My favorite.
I
I love it.
know. And I have a couple more that are rolling out within the next few months. One is for endometriosis, another one is for fibroids and cysts. And then I have some liver bitters coming out as well.
So exciting.
Oops. Sorry,
Do
Colby
we
just
have a visitor?
Yes, Colby just laid my little fox dog just laid down and she kind of moved the tripod a little bit.
No worries. I was gonna say, you were one of the first people that I ever came across on social media that even got me remotely interested in learning about my hormone health because, like you said, I was so beyond not misinformed, but just like not informed at all. Like none of this was ever touched on growing up, even well into like the beginning of my 20s. I didn't even know there were different phases of your cycle. Like I literally just thought, okay, I get my period for a couple days, I'll deal with that, and then the rest of the month is like the same. And that's just like so wild to me that we're just not taught the basics of our bodies. And like
Right.
you said, the world being constructed around male hormones and the way that that kind of body works, again is just a recent thing that I've come across that I'm like, oh my God, the whole world, everything that we're meant to do is not naturally supportive of what we should be doing for our bodies. And so
Absolutely.
you've got me so interested in this topic of hormone health. I got off the pill in January of 2020. I've been
Yay!
working on my own journey of healing my hormones. I totally relate to that feeling of just sickness, and it started for me just feeling like something wasn't right, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Just all of the sort of symptoms that you named, just like being tired, just feeling so dull, the brain fog, nothing felt right. I didn't feel like lively. So that was one of the first things that made me want to try to come off the pill, because I was thrown on it at 15 years old because I had really bad cramps and I wasn't
Mm,
told anything about it. I was told that it would fix my cramps and it would cure me of all of the pain, and I had no idea anything else about it other than, all right, cool, I'm not going to be in pain anymore. Didn't know that that is something that you could heal. 2 years off the pill, I'm having nowhere near the amount of pain that I had as a teenager. That was something that I was like super scared about, that it was all going to come back. But thanks to people like you and Soothe and, natural remedies, things that I've been incorporating into my day to day life, I just feel so much better. And I have found like this new passion for this subject as well, because when you start to learn these things, you just want to like shout it off the rooftops, and
mhm.
it's so empowering. And through finding people like you, I feel like I found this amazing group of people that are taking charge of their health, and they're feeling empowered to learn about how their bodies work and stand up for themselves in the medical setting. And so I'm just beyond excited to have you here with us today so that you can give us sort of like living in tune with your cycle 101.
Yes, and I love that so much. It makes me so happy to we've connected obviously multiple times, Abby and I, over. And also, side note, my younger sister's name is Abby, so the fact that
Oh,
this is Abby and Maddie on a podcast, it's like the amount
perfect.
of times that I've heard Abby and Maddie those names together, it's
Uh
too many to count.
huh.
Um, but there's so many amazing points that you just said that I was like, I want to say, but I didn't want to stop your flow. You first mentioned like the man cycle, and men
Mhm.
have a circadian rhythm. They fluctuate on this 24-hour circadian rhythm, which women do as well, right? I mean, like, of course, we to have the circadian rhythm that governs our sleep and our wake cycles. But then we have this whole separate internal biological clock called the infradian rhythm, which that then governs our mood, our metabolism, our creativity, our social ability, our libido, which is our sex drive, our cravings. It governs so much. And, like I think I mentioned at the beginning, I was just on a webinar before this, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but our brain changes on average about 25% throughout a cycle. So much is going on throughout the course of our 26 to 32 day menstrual cycle, which I do want to say, the universal average is 29.5 days, but anything from 26 days to 32 days is great. Anything shorter than that or longer than that, we do like to investigate what's
Mhm.
going on, why it would be so short or so long. But the way that like the hustle culture and the way that our society is just set up in general is so not supportive of our hormones. And we're wondering
Mhm.
why we have PMS and why we're running on stress fumes and all these things. And it's because, like we're just constantly bombarded with triggers and stressors, everything from the blue light on our screens, which is so unnatural. And we just forget how unnatural that is.
Mhm.
Um, to sitting in traffic. I mean, we sit way too much, instead people just go crush their bodies through a 30 to 60-minute workout and then sit the rest of the day when, again, like our ancestors were just walking. They're just moving their bodies throughout the day, and they're
Mhm.
like doing, some manual labor here and there and, building and doing that type of stuff. But, they weren't like going to Barry's boot camp for 60 minutes and then sitting, in traffic in their cars and then sitting in an office the rest of the day. So a
Mhm.
lot of what we do now is just become very lazy, I feel like. And we get everything delivered to. I even get my groceries delivered sometimes when I don't have enough time. But there are so many perks to living in this modern technology advancement world. However, we need to come back and be more grounded as well, and do these things, adopt these practices, especially as menstruators, to support how our body is supposed to be functioning, because there's so much that is just going against how our body should be working. You even step
Mhm.
outside to get, fresh air, and, or, put your feet in some dirt, to earth, to ground. And if it's been sprayed with a bunch of pesticides and chemicals, though, it's still not the best for you. So it's kind of
Mhm.
funny. It's like I have so many like funny memes that I like create in my head throughout the day of like, just the modern day, like hippie, like
Mhm.
trying to like, be grounding and earthing, but like you're still like grounding and earthing and maybe not the best soil, and you're like, on your phone.
All
So,
right.
um, but yeah, I mean, really just that's like a huge part of what I do, and what the brand is, like the mission of the brand is
Mhm.
to help us all become more in tune with ourselves, and to understand that everyone has a very unique biochemistry as well. And which is why anyone who follows me knows that I don't so much post like what people should be eating necessarily on my page or anything like that. I give like general guidelines like, oh, you're in your ovulatory phase, which we will get into, eat lighter and fresher foods, and you should have more energy right now, so do whatever you want to do with that. But I don't ever really, unless I'm working with someone one-on-one and I really know
Mhm.
them and I know their story, I have labs up in front of me, a symptom questionnaire, intake forms. I seldom ever like tell people like, this is what you should be eating, this is how you should be working out, like this specific, like very specific,
Right, right.
Um, and I've just even like see there are always trends going around, social media and like the health and wellness realm. And right now I feel like I've been seeing like a lot of hate on like nuts and seeds and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, oh, like we
It's
have to
always
stop.
something.
It's always something. We just have to stop telling people what to do, instead
Mhm.
guide them to becoming the CEOs of their body, and understanding and listening to their body, and knowing like, oh, I didn't sleep that well last night, and I haven't drank enough water today. That's why I probably have a headache right now. I'm getting a cramp. I'm going to go supplement with some magnesium and some dongui. And, it's just like becoming more just in tune with your body, so you know what to give it when it's, showing these symptoms, instead of just like hopping on Instagram and being like, oh, well, Sally worked out this way and this is what she ate today, so like that's what I have to do too.
Mhm.
So I think like there's so much beauty in like social media and being able to like reach a really big audience with like a great message, but sometimes the message can get a little skewed.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I always love to tell people that as well, like, because I get messages all the time like, hey, this girl doesn't like, right, I've just been getting this so much this week, which is why the nuts and seeds keep coming up, but like, can I not eat nuts and seeds? And I'm like, look, do you feel good when you eat nuts and seeds? And most of the time, I'm like, yeah, I do, and actually helps me get
Mhm.
my cycle back. And I'm like, then keep doing it. Like
Yeah.
it's just I can't tell you what to do. This lady can't tell you what to do. I can be your guide. So that's a great way to preface what I'm about to get into and explaining the 4 cycles, is that everything I say, always, for all our listeners, take it with a grain of potassium. Because at the end of the day, what works for me is going to be slightly different than what works for you. But there are, very predictable shifts that go on with our hormones throughout our menstrual cycle, and ways that we can really tap into that power and harness it, and leverage our social life, our sex life, our spiritual life, our work life, all of the above. So we'll start off with the first phase of the cycle, which is
Yes.
our period. And so the first day that you start to bleed is the first day of your menstrual phase, your period, and that is the first day of your entire cycle. Um, and I know some people, I do want to give credit to those people who like to call it the ovulatory phase, because that technically is the big bang of the whole ordeal. We only have a period because we ovulate. So
Mhm.
shout out to anyone who calls it by that. I'm just so used to calling it a menstrual cycle at this point. Neither is right or wrong. But we'll just start off with the period is the first phase. So the period, natural low point in terms of hormones. So it's very understandable and expected to not feel your greatest self during this time. You should
Mhm.
not be in pain. You shouldn't need a heating pack. You shouldn't need Advil. You should not be so moody or, unable to sleep or anything like that. otherwise something's going on. But this is a natural energy low point. So, for me, I don't plan social things around this time. If I do, I know I'm going to regret it.
Mhm.
There are some times where I can handle like a dinner with some friends at one of their places, and I actually really like that. It's comforting. I'm in comfortable clothes. I'm just with my really close loved ones. And it's very relaxed. And then there are other phases where other times when I'm, on my period and I'm like, I just want to be at home. I really want to reflect on everything that went on the last cycle in terms of my business. My partner and I travel a lot, so reflecting on, just everything that we've done, for this entire cycle, and what do I want to change about the next cycle? What do I need to release right now? We're physically releasing, a huge, like a part of us,
Mhm.
our endometrium, our uterine lining. So also it's a very, spiritual time. It should be a very spiritual time for all of us. And, back in the day when a lot of women would cycle together as well, there are white moon bleeders and red moon bleeders. But the white moon bleeders, like myself, we menstruate with the new moon. And this is just this time to like really like be grounded, connect with our sisters, and release everything that just does not serve us anymore. And then we start to transition into what's called the follicular phase. And it's the time, so there's two halves of the cycle. Some practitioners teach on the two halves. I think it does a little bit of a injustice to the whole cycle because the way that our body's changing in our mind and our hormones, it's better to have the four phases to really go off of those. But
Mhm.
I get a question, not a whole lot, but it's just something good to address because someone may be listening and going like, but I heard that there are two phases, the follicular phase and the luteal phase. And yes, that is true, but we're just talking about the four phases right now because your period is a whole phase in itself.
Mhm.
That is a part of the follicular phase, yes, but it's, the period and ovulation are very distinct times, in my mind and in our bodies. So we transition into the follicular phase, and our follicle stimulating hormone is increasing, which is creating the follicles, which are sacs that contain our ovum, our eggs. So that's preparing for ovulation. And then around day 5, 7, our estrogen starts to increase. And then as estrogen starts to increase, our follicle stimulating hormone starts to decrease. And that's just because we only want one egg to proliferate. And as our estrogen starts to increase and we're trending towards ovulation, our testosterone starts to increase as well. Yes, we ladies do have testosterone. It shouldn't be too much, of course, but we do. And so that's when we really start to get like the high amounts of energy. And this is all natural. This isn't because we're like, jacked off caffeine. This is just natural high energy. And the estrogen brings this sense of like calm and some energy for sure. And then like just beautiful, like plump, clear skin and shiny hair. And then the testosterone brings like the high libido, which is sex drive, the like confidence boost. And I know some people are listening to this and they're like, I don't feel that social at any time of my cycle. They're, of course, the more introverted people, but in perspective, of course, throughout the course of your
Mhm.
cycle, this is the time where you're feeling a little bit more like, ooh, I could, whether it's dancing for you somewhere or, like to socialize with people. Like right now, I'm trending towards ovulation. I'm really high energy. I was going to my favorite elixir bar earlier today, and I could see that my friend, two of my friends one was teaching and one was just in the class, but a yin yoga class. So very, calm, chill. That's something that you should be doing during your period. And I'm
Mhm.
like outside the door, like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, this is so not the vibe right now. Like,
Yeah.
I just because I'm like so high energy in this phase. And, Braxton and my partner and I just got back from basically a month of traveling. And I have just like basically booked myself full of plans with friends because I've missed everyone so much. And I'm like, this is perfect because I'm so energized for this.
Mhm.
And so that's trending towards ovulation. It's actually very clever of our bodies to, like make it so that during this time, the only time of our cycle that we're fertile is when we also conveniently have the highest sex drive. So beware of that, everyone. It's, I always kind of give myself like a pat on the back, like, good job, body. Like, you're doing the right things, but we're still wearing condoms when we have sex this week because we're not having a baby. Our bodies, obviously our menstrual cycles, have so much benefit other than just like, procreating life. Like we need
Mhm.
it for just our overall general health and well-being. But the main reason of it is to procreate life. So, again, notice all of these changes that are going on throughout your cycle, but also don't give in to the temptation if you do not want to have a baby. And don't give in to that temptation. It's so funny. Like I had an event last night for Peace Love Hormones, and it was like a yoga and sound healing and, vegan dinner. It was like this whole event. And Braxton was there, the only guy there. It was all women, but Braxton was there, of course. And I just like could not stop looking at him while we're doing yoga. And like even during Shavasana and the sound healing, like I just needed to be touching him. So like I just had like my toe like touching his body, just so I could have some point of contact. And it's so funny. I
Mhm.
mean, I never go through like a time where I'm like, get away from me, I hate you, and I have this crazy PMS, because that's not normal, and I take, care of myself to make sure that doesn't happen. But I
Mhm.
definitely have phases of my cycle where I'm just like, I want you here next to me, but I don't necessarily want to be touched that much. It just doesn't
Yeah.
sound that appealing to me to be, touched. Whereas like during the ovulatory phase, I'm like, I'm like a monkey, like hanging on, like,
Yeah.
don't leave my side. So it's really fun to, tap into that and to just like play and,
It's it's
embrace who we
so
are.
it's so cool when you can recognize that too, and like you said, our bodies are so smart, and you're like, "Wow, okay, this makes sense. I'm moving towards ovulation. It's natural for this to be the time where, like, I wanna be closer to my partner. I wanna go hang out with people in general because biologically, okay, gonna hang out with more people, gonna reproduce." Like, it just all makes sense, and it's so
Right.
cool. You kind of, like, think of it that way.
Yeah, and if you think that's cool, wait till you hear this. So the luteal phase then is comes right after ovulation, and we actually only ovulate once over the span of 12 to 24 hours.
So
But
crazy.
we do say that there's this there's a ovulatory phase because there's a fertile window of about 5 days beforehand. But really, we're seeing, especially just because there's an unspoken epidemic of fertility issues within the country, we're really seeing that it's really like the 24 to 48 hours before ovulation that you are most likely to conceive, if you have unprotected sex. But again, I work with mostly people who don't want to get pregnant, actually.
Mhm.
And I definitely have my fair share of women who are like, oh, I'm ready to conceive now. But really, where I feel like I work mostly with young girls, actually starting like age 16 to like mid 20s, who don't want to be on hormonal contraceptive and want to track their cycle and don't want to get pregnant.
Mhm.
And I can obviously really relate to that because that's the exact phase of life that I'm in right now. And it's just cool to like, foresee the future of how my business will ebb and flow and change with me as I change,
Yeah.
and I will eventually have children and, I'm going through that whole beautiful process. But, most people don't. So I just say, let's just be safe then and let's block off, even if it's a whole week. Like what's a week of your time where you just are either completely abstaining from penetrative sex. And that's the other thing. I have a whole podcast episode with Braxton actually about
Mhm.
reframing our thoughts about sex, and that the media has totally screwed it up for women. Like the way
Yeah.
that the women, it shows women and shows orgasming after 2 minutes max of like penetrative sex. It's like that doesn't happen. Okay,
Mhm.
most of us need actually external stimulation for at least on average 20 minutes, a lot of studies have shown. So don't feel bad about yourself if you're listening to this and you're like, it takes me so long to finish. It's like, it's you like, just work with your partner. It's supposed to be this game. It's a practice. It's a meditation. I highly recommend listening to that podcast episode and starting to reframe your thoughts around it. But anyway, during that time of the week, just do other forms of play. You don't have to, he doesn't need to be inside of you. And if you do want to do that, if that feels good for you both, wear a condom. And honestly, it's not a big deal at all. And then your sex during that week and outside of that is just better because you're not on something that is, turning off your libido. So it's
Mhm.
so worth it. You can adopt the fertility awareness method as well, and using that in conjunction with condoms is super reliable for preventing pregnancy. And then, so yeah, that's my little spiel on the ovulatory phase and
Can I
getting.
just say can I just
Mhm.
say real quick, it is so wild to me that we were taught that we're just, like, fertile all the time, that we can just get pregnant any day of the week, when that
Right.
is so, like, not true. There's such a small window that is available for us to conceive. Again, just a crazy piece of
It's
information that we're just not taught.
It's wild. And also, like, girl, I was told, I remember there was this thing going around middle school that people were just saying that if you were in a hot tub with a guy, you could get pregnant. It's
Uh-huh.
like so many silly things that
Mhm.
were kind of going around during the whole like sex ed topic, I remember, in both middle school and in high school. And just like such funny things that I was connecting with so many women last night who are like in their like later 50s, and they're like, oh my gosh, you should have, when I was having difficulty getting pregnant, my doctor was telling me to, go put my legs up the wall after I had sex. And like
Yeah.
that would somehow do the trick. And obviously it didn't. And I was just like, oh my goodness, the confusion that everyone has, including medical
Yeah.
professionals around the female body and like, conception and, we're told also that it's just like so easy, right? Like you can get pregnant
Mhm.
anytime. I mean, there's that thing going around about even being a hot tub with another guy. It's like, it's really like, I'm forgetting what year it was, like that old school movie, The Labyrinth, though. That's what it's like to try and successfully get pregnant. The amount that needs to happen
Mhm.
separately for like him to have good healthy sperm and sperm motility and sperm quality, and then for you to have everything that's going on right within your body, everything from the very beginning in terms of having the right pH within your vagina to nurture that sperm,
Mhm.
having the right cervical fluid that changes throughout our cycle as well, having that fertile cervical fluid that acts as literally like an Uber ride when healthy for the sperm. And then for your eggs to be healthy, for your uterine lining to have to be plush enough, for it to have been built up enough during that follicular phase with the estrogen to successfully implant and nurture a fertilized egg. So many things, right? And then after that, like many of us actually get pregnant and never even know it because we lose it before we would ever even notice,
Mhm.
and that could also be because we just don't have enough progesterone to nurture it in the second half of our cycle. So many things, right, have to happen in order for it to happen. And I think more often than not, though, we hear of those stories of like someone being like, I got pregnant right away, and then we remember that though, and
Yeah.
it's like this fear, and it's like, oh, but we that's going to happen to us, when really it's actually difficult, especially if you've been on hormonal contraceptive that's been totally funking with your body's natural cycle and cues and functionings. It actually is very difficult. So moving into, and I know this because I've worked with so many women, including my older sister right now, who is on hormonal contraceptive for 15 years, and it's been a struggle to even get her cycle back, much
Mhm.
less conceive, which she really wants to do within the next year with her husband. So then we get into the luteal phase, though, and that comes right after ovulation. And this is really governed by progesterone. Progesterone makes us feel very calm. And so anyone who experiences anxiety, insomnia, and all that during this phase probably just does not have the right amounts of progesterone. And this is the time where we do experience a second peak of estrogen a couple days into, like, midway into this luteal phase. So we do get that like spike of energy. A lot of people do, but for the most part, it's a lower energy phase. You're slowly trending towards that period energy. And so this is the time to be doing more like mat work when it comes to movement. So I love the yoga and the Pilates, things that are just more grounding. And food on average, we need about like, I'm going to stop saying the number because there is a number of, amount of calories, but it doesn't matter. You just need more food during this
Mhm.
phase. We have a higher resting cortisol rate. So that's just a fancy way of saying we need more fuel, more grounding foods as well. Like raw salads and juices and smoothies probably aren't going to sound that appealing to you during this time. So don't be confused just because, you're being marketed that. Really like the warm soups and kind of like more warm and grounding foods are really going to be great during this phase. And starting to go a little bit slower as well. I call this like the crossing my T's and dotting the I's phase in terms of my business, because I am a business owner. So this is the time where, because I'm not like, oh my gosh, let's go out and do a bunch of things and create content and do all this like high energy stuff. I'm like, what my brain and my body wants to do is kind of just like go find a comfy place or a cute cafe
Mhm.
to go and do maybe some like look over financials, or really hone in on research and formulation. So obviously everyone's job is different, but this is definitely a time to be kind of concluding projects and doing more like reading and research and all of that stuff.
Yeah. And I like you touched on the food thing because I feel like there's, I guess, shame sometimes around the natural things that our body wants at different parts of our cycle, especially when you don't fully understand that, and sort of the stereotypes that go along with, like, being on your period and like wanting to eat all this extra stuff when that concept is something that is natural to us. Like, your body literally needs more food, and that's not something that
Mm.
you should be ashamed of. And, diet culture teaches us that don't you dare start eating more food. So I'm glad
Oh,
that you mentioned that because that was something that took me a long time to like come to terms with. I would feel so horrible during that time of the month when I would naturally be craving all this extra food and maybe some, more starchy carbs, and I was like, but I can't because, this and that. So it's
right.
definitely a good point to make because I don't think a lot of women are made to feel comfortable about that when it's totally normal.
Absolutely. And sometimes I like forget because this is my life, and this is like I've just nestled into this beautiful community, like here in Austin in person, and also like virtually on Instagram, of like these people who are just so, this is also like kind of a first language for them. Or maybe second language, but they're very like well versed in it and they understand. And then I break out of it and I remember like, oh, this is like, there is still a lot of like false information going on out there. I saw this
Mm-hmm.
TikTok today of this girl who was just talking about, how I'm forgetting what, I think it was like Peloton. She was naming some like big brands though when it came to like fitness, and how they're just pushing you all the time to like show
Mm-hmm.
up. And it just reminded me of, even like my gym. I stopped going to a lot of the classes because I would, go to a cycling class and I would just be like called out because they have like your RPM like up on like the screen, and
Yeah.
it'd be like, come on, Maddie, like I know you can do better. And like me being like, I kind of like competitive in nature, and like, more so with myself than anyone else, but like always
Mm-hmm.
wanting to be better. And I was just like, and I also played sports growing up. So I was just like, I can do it. And then I would feel so depleted afterwards. And I was
Yeah.
moody and I was tired. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's so sad that, this is, and Peloton I know is huge as well. I mean, you see those people who are like, doing a 60-minute cycling class with you, and you're like, you can do this. I'm about to run 20 miles after this. And you're like, what?
Uh-huh.
You're about to run 20 miles after you did this. It just makes you think all of these, even like if it doesn't seem like it impacts us on a subconscious level, where it's
Mhm.
just ingraining these thoughts and beliefs that if you aren't constantly doing, you are a failure.
Yeah.
And there, insert whatever negative word, you tell yourself, but it's negative, right? If you're not
Mhm.
constantly doing. And we have to just accept that rest is productive. Like, and we need it. We need it no
Mhm.
matter what phase we're in of our cycle. Some phases we need it more, but you always need rest. And we need time of just kind of being bored too, like not like rest, not just like laying on your couch on your phone or like watching a show, but like truly just like resting and watching or reading a book,
Mhm.
or walking outside without your phone and technology, just laying in the sun with like no agenda other than to just lay there. Resting also could just be enjoying a meal with a loved one, and really being grounded and present with that food and with that human being in that conversation. All of that is rest, and all of it is productive, and it's really transformational when it comes to our health and our longevity. And
Yeah.
that's like the name of the game, right? Like I always ask myself, and I encourage other people to ask themselves before they do something, is this going to actually improve my health and well-being? So, I always tell people that when they're like, I want to do keto though. And I'm like, okay, is cutting carbs out though, is that really going to add on years to the end of your life? Because I don't know about you all, but I'm trying to live to like 120, and I want it to be good though. I don't want to be, bedridden in a hospital. Like I want to still be skiing and doing a bunch of stuff. I want to see my great
Mhm.
great grandchildren. So I always just tell people like health is, yes, there's so many things out there that could be a short, quick fix, a short, quick fix for, whatever X, Y, and Z that you're experiencing. But the long-term changes come from consistency and listening to yourself and going the natural way. And it takes time, like I said, I'm still healing. It's a journey. We live in a
Mhm.
very toxic world that's unsupportive. And I am not at the place in my life where I can just move to a deserted island, naked and barefoot. And we would still,
Mhm.
even there though, encounter some toxic chemicals in our environment. It's just unfortunately the world that we live in. But, I just tell people like, do the best that you can and don't stress out over the things that we have no control over. But there are a lot of things that we do have control over. And, just do what feels best for you. Because at the end of the day, you can only show up as your best self if you feel good. So,
Right.
mhm.
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot on this podcast, but the single best thing I have done for myself is slow the F down. I used to be so go, 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 like, especially through college. I took on so much, and I felt so much guilt when I wasn't meeting that, like, level of productivity that I thought I needed to be, and
Mhm.
that's how I thought I needed to live my life, bouncing from one thing to the next, and I realized that it was affecting my mental health, but it wasn't until recently that I realized that it was affecting my physical health as well. Like, it's both of those things are so tied into the way we live day to day, and especially living in this world of hustle culture and, accomplishing one thing, bouncing right to the next. And you got to have your calendar fully packed and you got to be busy to be worthy. It's so hard to get yourself out of that mindset. But me being able to slow down, realize that I don't have to earn my rest. I don't have to, earn the ability to sit on the couch for 30 minutes. Like, I straight up would pride myself in not stopping. Like, I would not relax, and I
Yeah.
felt good about myself doing that. And it took a couple years of living like that for me to really realize, like, this is taking a toll on me. I don't feel good mentally, and I don't feel good physically.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
Oh no, I think that, I really relate to you on that too of I mean it was the same thing. It was like by 9 a.m. I needed to check off all these things. I
Mhm.
needed to go on this crazy long run or go kickboxing. Like I had a specific workout for each day of the week. And I needed to just do all of these things. And at the end of the day, even though I could say that I did so much, I still didn't feel happy and I wasn't sleeping
Nope.
well. And I didn't look fabulous either because I was underweight and my eyes were sunken in. My hair was falling out. And,
Mhm.
I just like, I remember I would hear all the time from like my parents. It was just like so typical for them to say, like, one of a variation of this, like, do you ever sit down and relax? Like, because I was
Mm.
always just doing,
Yeah.
and so I've done like so much healing work when it comes to that, and trauma work and stuff. Like, why am I like that?
I know.
And it's obviously so many things, right? Like, it's never really
Mhm.
just one thing, but a huge part of that is just the culture that we live in. Um, and, even like the men who are listening to this, like, yeah, you guys, have a 24-hour cycle, but still, you don't need to be doing that all the time either, And I think we're all just so hyped up on stress hormones all the time. It's like addictive. And,
Mhm.
I constantly reminded myself because going through neuroplasticity right now and changing and rewiring my brain after 20 plus years of living a certain way. It's going to take some time. It's not just this snap overnight, but I do have to remind myself sometimes because I can just feel like me getting so excited. I'm just like a very excited human being in general, but I'm like, will just be like brushing my teeth and I can feel my heart racing and I want to dance and
Yeah.
all this stuff, and I'm just like, phew, okay,
Mhm.
I'm literally brushing my teeth right now. Let's just take a chill pill for a second. So, but that's also us being human, right? Like no one is perfect, and it's
Mhm.
just noticing what's going on and how we're feeling. That is the superpower, is being so in tune with yourself that you notice when you're, oh, I'm getting a little bit too excited and I'm getting stressing myself out for no reason. I'm,
Mhm.
in a rush to get everywhere. And instead just be like, okay, let me just take a deep breath, and try to relax a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. That leads us into, so
Oh,
this was
cool.
from like a week ago. I had
Okay.
people submit any questions that they had for
Love
you.
it.
And so I have a couple here. And the one question that kind of goes into what we were talking about is, how can someone who isn't super familiar with all of this, is just hearing some of this information for the first time, how can they begin to implement some of these things into their life in a maintainable, non overwhelming way?
Yeah, so I always say to start with the basics because most people aren't even doing that. And we need to make sure that the foundations are there, such as sleep, or else, nothing else matters. If you're not sleeping well, nothing else is gonna really matter or work when it comes to like, extra supplements or herbs or, even the food that you're eating. Like if you're not sleeping, we need to make sure you're sleeping. So I always just tell people like implement one thing at a time. There's so much that you can do. And I sometimes get stressed out, especially after like I've, I'm with my mentor. I have this awesome like 70-year-old badass mentor in Austin who's like an herbalist and naturopath
Oh,
doctor, all
I
the
love
things.
that.
And sometimes I leave clinic. I have clinic days with her and, we'll just be working together and doing whatever we decide to do that day. Always something crazy, complex and awesome and beautiful. But sometimes I leave, and not so much anymore, but at the beginning I would leave and I would be like, I know so much but so little and it's stressing me out, and
Mhm.
I would get down on myself. And then I just realized that, oh, but like I have a whole life to keep learning things and like I don't need to do everything right now. And so I always just tell people one thing at a time, like what I'm doing now. I thought like a year ago today I had it all figured out. And now I'm like, wait, I know so much more. Not that I didn't know a lot back then. I did. I knew an immense amount, but I'm doing so much more now. And I've changed the way that I do certain things and I feel even better. So it's like constantly optimizing. I say
Mhm.
start slow, start with the basics. So make sure that you're sleeping. It not only matters how much you sleep, but also the quality of your sleep. So everything that you can do to optimize your sleep in terms of having a completely blackout room. I recommend everyone start taping their lips shut as well, to improve deeper sleep, to improve hydration as well. And, all the sleep hacks. I need to create a whole episode on that because we could talk for 30 to 60 minutes on how to optimize sleep.
Mhm.
But just make sure you're sleeping, quality sleep and getting in bed before or by 10 p.m. as well, because we do the most brain detoxification and cell rejuvenation between the hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And then just making sure you're, really reducing toxic load because that has a direct effect on our adrenals and the way that our brain functions and our gut and our liver. So that's definitely foundational as well. Whenever I'm working with someone, especially someone who's struggling, I'm like, we got to slowly reduce the amount of toxic chemicals that you're using in your, everything from your shampoo and your makeup and all that beauty stuff to like what you're cleaning your countertops with. And so really removing those toxic chemicals that can be impacting how our bodies function. And then drinking and including filtered water as well.
Mm.
So getting a filter for your water and making sure you're hydrating enough. And then keeping your blood sugar stable. That's a huge part of it too. So not fasting more than 12 to 14 hours, depends on the dosha type. Doshas, just different types of body types, according to traditional Ayurvedic medicine. But, my max is like 12 hours and that's just overnight, that's literally from the
Mhm.
time you stop eating dinner until breakfast. So,
Right.
some people, my more like pitta kaphas can go like maybe 14 hours or so. But still, I mean, I'm not like a intermittent I'm not like, woo, intermittent fasting. I think it's great to give ourselves that time overnight to again do that detoxification, that cellular rejuvenation. And then during the day, when we're up and moving around and our brains are working, we need to fuel ourselves. So, having really good, nourishing meals that will last you 3 to 4 hours until the next meal. You have your protein, you have your fat, you have your fiber. I'm not a fan of juice cleanses. Nope, thumb down in my book. It's just not like it's, and they're deceptive though, right? Because people are like, but I feel so good on them and I'm not bloated. I'm like, it's because you're not eating anything.
Right.
That's why you're not bloated. Let's address why you're getting bloated from eating food. Yeah, so keeping your blood sugar stable by having those nourishing grounding meals. And if it comes from the earth, it's a yes in my book, as long as you're not allergic to it, of course,
Mhm.
or, highly sensitive to a certain food. But if it comes from the earth, I'm always like, thumbs up, it's great. And of course, not getting too stressed out about, what we're eating as well, because that stress can, impact us. So, I really do believe that one saying of like the stress over the cookie is worse than the cookie
Mm.
itself. I'm not
Yeah.
telling people that, cookies and donuts should be included. All these highly processed foods should be included in, like the daily regimen. But don't be stressed over it if you are out and that's what you happen to have.
Mhm.
Don't be stressed out about anything that you're eating. Don't be so hyper focused on it. But, my biggest tip for that is including just like having a kitchen full of hormone supportive foods, foods that are going to keep your blood sugar stable so that you don't
I
go,
think we lost your audio.
oh, can you hear me
Oh, there
now?
you go.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
I don't know what
Um,
happened.
but just in saying that, in concluding that, just making sure that you're the most supported in your home environment to feel good.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
personally would love an Instagram post from you on some good cleaning products or like your cleaning regimen, because I'm currently in the
Yeah.
process of trying to find better alternatives and I just like am a little bit lost. So I would love to see that from
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah, and I'll actually give you access to my app because I have a whole section of my app of just not toxic free living. So
Ah,
everything
I love
from
it.
cleaning supplies to, shampoos and conditioners to the bed sheets that you're sleeping on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you links to that, Abby, for you to join, and then we'll also give a link for your listeners to join as well.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. Jumping into the next question that got asked, what are some of the side effects of coming off of hormonal birth control? What can someone expect? And then, sort of as a part two, someone else asked, what can you do to support your hormones while coming off of hormonal birth control?
Yeah, so the symptoms are really different for everyone, but some basic ones for post birth control syndrome symptoms would be weight gain, acne. It really, honestly, it depends on what you went on the pill for in the beginning. What have you been suppressing all of this time? Can come
Hmm.
back for sure. It's not a given though. And to answer the second part, we really just need to support the liver, which has been dramatically impacted. The functioning and structure of your liver is altered by hormonal birth control. And our liver, which I have a whole podcast episode on, multiple because it's just so beautiful and important, performs over 500 vital functions of our body, including the packaging and excreting of estrogen metabolites. So a lot of, the PMS symptoms that we see is because our liver is not functioning properly, and our liver and our guts are also related. So it's like when you're messing with the two big boys, the liver and the gut,
Hmm.
and usually if the liver is impacted, the gallbladder, a lot of other things are, happening. And that's also what I do. And what I encourage other practitioners and doctors to do is look at the body as a whole. It's never like just one thing. But, when we're transitioning off the pill, before you stop the pill, we have to support your liver. We have to support your gut and support your elimination pathways. So many of us just aren't even pooping enough. I try to get everyone to be going 2 to 3 times a day, sweating in a sauna and through movement, all of these things that are helping to excrete the toxins, which are packaged up in our liver through 2 separate phases. The first phase is really dependent on vitamins and minerals, most of which are depleted by the pill. So it's making sure also that
Hmm.
we're, replenishing and restoring our body of the depleted nutrients, the nutrients that we need for healthy skin, hair, menstrual cycles, to get our menstrual cycle back, and for, liver detoxification. And then making sure that we're actually, excreting the toxins after phase two, which, using amino acids, breaks them down from fat soluble to water soluble, which then we can excrete through our urine, through our stool, through sweating, and then also through mucus. So, spit and snot and all these things that a lot of us just put back into our body when we have them, but really we should be getting them out, tongue scraping, blowing your nose, all that stuff. So it's really just supporting the body's natural processes so that when you do get off the pill, it does not have a total freak out. Yeah,
Love
that's
that.
my
Love
answer.
that. I pill in January of 2020, and I did like so much research before coming off of it to try to see like what I could possibly do, because I read so much about how scary it can be to come off the pill, and I think there's a lot of stuff out there that makes women almost want to stay on it. Like it makes you wonder, should I even be coming off of it? Like I'm gonna get acne and I'm gonna gain weight and all this stuff, but it was so important for me to remind myself that this is for my long-term health. Like my skin might freak out, I might put on a couple pounds, but like this is for my long-term health, for the longevity of, you know, how I want to live the rest of my life. So
Absolutely. Also, like, it's so funny. I feel like we're very similar in a lot of ways, but I too was like, oh my gosh, do I do it? Like, I've heard these horror stories.
mhm,
Like, this girl said that she had terrible acne when she got off. This girl said that she had panic attacks every single day for a month straight when she got off. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, but I prepped my body beforehand. I believed in
mhm,
myself, which is a huge part of,
yeah,
physical well being is also emotional well being. And I believed in myself. I believed in the process and everything that I was doing, and I weighed out the short and long term benefits,
yeah,
and to me it just made sense, and I was at a place in my life where I could do that. And about the weight gain, I want to touch on that. So sometimes people can gain too much weight that is not needed, and estrogen and toxins are both stored. Toxins are stored in fat cells, and also estrogen is produced from that. So it's always balance is the name of the game, right? Like I definitely put on some pounds. I don't know if it's directly related to coming off hormonal birth control, or if it's just because I get older every year, and I'm growing into more of a woman. I have,
mhm.
butt and boobs finally. Woo. Um, it's really unreasonable to think that we're just going to fit in our clothes from,
Yeah,
every single year. So really, I do meet a lot of women in practice who I understand like the weight gain and body image. Like we just live in this society that it's so harmful and detrimental to our emotional well-being. And like,
mhm,
so many of us experience body dysmorphia. And I really try to just like talk to women like heart to heart, like, do you really think that this weight gain is something that you need to lose, or is this just your body what it needed,
yeah,
in order to, because we shouldn't have too much fat on our body, but we also shouldn't be skin and bones.
mhm,
We're supposed to have these, soft looking bodies that are healthy and functioning. And so more often than not, it's the later. It's that, okay, maybe I do need to work on just my relationship with my body, that it's
right,
okay to have put on some pounds. My body needed
mhm,
that. And then of course, sometimes I do work with women who it's actually their thyroid is not working function properly. So we need to do some work on that. But
mhm.
usually it's the body dysmorphia.
Yeah, it's so wild to me how much all of that stuff is sort of interconnected, and how much the, you know, body image and diet culture stuff impacts so many other areas of our life. So trying to get to the root sort of mental cause sometimes, or the mindset shifts to getting out of the idea that, you know, you need to be the same size that you were when you were 16 years old. All of
Right.
that sort of healing is going to be so beneficial in the long run.
Right. Agreed.
Alrighty. Moving into the next question that we got. You touched on this a little bit, so I'll just ask if there's anything else you wanted to add. How to prevent pregnancy naturally without
Mm.
hormonal contraceptive.
Yeah, so I touched on just like that there is a fertile phase, and I hope that really like inspires a lot of listeners to go over, whether it's to my podcast to listen more on like the fertility awareness method, or to even work with the fertility awareness method educator. Yes, there are those who literally their job is just to help you start tracking your fertile signs. Because I don't want anyone to leave this like quick explanation and be like, okay, now I'm going to start doing it. Really make sure you always do your own research. But so a few things are changing throughout our cycle. Number one, our basal body temperature is changing, and our cervical fluid, also called cervical mucus, is changing, and our cervix position is changing. And so when you're tracking these three throughout your cycle, you can actually figure out when you're fertile or not in that fertile window specifically. So I really, really recommend going and like listening to, it's like an over an hour long podcast episode of me getting into it. And then there are a couple of other people who I can recommend, not off the top of my head, but like one of my friends on Instagram, her Instagram account is Wise Womb Mama. And she is an actual FAM educator. So I don't know if she's currently taking on clients right now because she did just have a baby, one that she wanted and planned for, I must mention, but she just had a baby. So I'm not sure if she's like working right now. I think she may be resting, but I'm sure she knows a plethora of people who do educate on this. And I do. I mean, I will teach women that for sure if they want to work with me. I would say most of the people I work with are coming to me because they're experiencing PMS or something like that. Not so many people just wanting to learn how to track their cycle, but I do love those people. So if you want to work with me as well, that would be awesome. But yeah, it's really just tracking those three major fertile signs and also tracking your mood, having a general sense of what phase of your cycle you're in, all of these things in conjunction with condoms while you are around that ovulation window is what we call natural family planning. Also, just the fertility awareness method. And it is possible. I mean, I've met more women than not who are like, I've used this for, 5+ years of my life and I've either never gotten pregnant or I only got pregnant when I was intending to get pregnant. So it's really powerful for those who want to get pregnant and those who don't want to get pregnant.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think the more that you learn about all of this, learn about your body, are able to track those signs of fertility, the more confidence and trust you almost build in yourself that you understand these things and you know that like you're not just going to get pregnant on a random Tuesday. Like there are things that have to be put in place, like you said. And so it can be really scary to start to dive into this. But the more you learn about it, the more confident you feel that, all right, this is something that I can do.
Absolutely.
All right, there was one more question, and that is how to support your body to get your period back. So if someone is not menstruating, what can they do to sort of help get that back?
Yeah. So if they're not getting their period and let's say, it's post-birth control, that's really like supporting your liver, supporting your gut, getting the ovaries back online and that communication with like between your ovaries and your brain. And sorry, Colby is scratching the door. It's distracting me. Stop it. Mom's working. um, so that's a whole different protocol versus someone with like amenorrhea from, perhaps over exercise or under eating. And so, or just way too stressed out. Maybe they're just like not sleeping enough and they're not doing like those foundationals, like I mentioned with like the water and, their toxic burden's too high. So it's obviously person dependent, but just always making sure that you are, nurturing your liver and your gut and your ovaries, your mitochondria health as well. We have so many mitochondria. The mitochondria are like the powerhouse of our cells. And on average, we have over 100,000 per cell in our ovaries. So an immense amount. So, cellular healing and rejuvenation is truly the root of all things. No matter where you're at in life, I always work on cellular rejuvenation. There's a lot of things you can do for that. Sleep, red infrared light, making sure that we have the right minerals as well for our mitochondria. There's so many things, right? But really it's, working with someone one-on-one, at least for the first couple of months and making sure that everything, your adrenals and your organs are back online and working, and they're powered by cells. So it's really like the cellular health that we target first. And then again, like most people aren't doing the basics, like they're not eating enough. So their blood sugar is all out of whack. They just don't have enough nutrients to have a cycle. over exercising or other forms of stress on the body, or their liver and gut need support after the pill. Or, I mean, most of us have been on like antibiotics or some sort of like Advil or something like that throughout our life that each time we've taken has impacted our detoxification pathways. It's impacted our liver and our gut lining. So it's just safe to say a lot of us could use some support in that department.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that wraps up all the questions that everyone had. I just wanted to thank you so much for not only coming on the podcast, but for everything that you do. You said at the beginning, if you could even, help one person or empower one person, then it's worth it to you. And you have certainly helped me so much. And I hope everybody listening has learned something about their bodies. And go follow Maddie on Instagram. I'll turn it over to you. Plug your Instagram, plug your podcast, anything else you
Yes.
want to plug.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Abby. It's honestly an honor to always talk about this, whether it's on an Instagram Live, on a podcast, a webinar. I love talking about this, so thank you for providing that space for me. Everyone go give me a follow on social media, on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. On Instagram, though, if you click that link in my bio, it'll take you to a drop-down menu of like anything that you need. So my podcast, my website, my ebooks, my app, all of the things are right there. Instagram is really just like the central hub for it, all of those links. So go give me a follow. If you listen to this podcast, share it and tag us, because I love like connecting with people, even when it's virtual, of like who's actually listening. So let us know if
Mhm.
you listen. And yeah, thank you so much again, Abby. And thanks everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you, thank you. And thank you guys all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, you know where to find me. You can follow me on Instagram. My personal Instagram is at Abby_Wellner, or you can find the Good Human Instagram at goodhumanpod, so you stay up to date on all things good human. As always, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, see ya.